She gave him everything, her love, her youth, even his child. But while she lay alone on a hospital table, he was holding another woman's hand. When she was reborn, the mission to win his heart was cancelled. This time she wouldn't fight for love. She'd walk away, and watch his entire world fall apart without her. They say death is the final silence. But for me it was only the beginning. I opened my eyes to a familiar ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, its blades humming a rhythm I hadn't heard in years. A soft breeze drifted through the half-open window, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and faint city exhaust. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. Then the voice came. System upgrade complete. Welcome back, host Lily. Due to a system recalibration, your mission target Ethan Carter is no longer required. You may now choose to terminate this world and return early. Bonus compensation has been granted. I blinked, unmoving, as the memories of my past life surged in waves. Years of trying to win Ethan's heart, raising his child without a title, smiling through humiliations, and finally dying with nothing but regrets carved into my bones. No. I was back. I sat up slowly, looking down at my trembling hands, the faint hospital band still wrapped around my wrist. My heart pounded, not with panic but with an eerie calm. I remembered this exact moment. I was pregnant. Just 1 month. And Ethan was out shopping for Natalie's birthday. In my past life I had clung to Ethan like a drowning woman to driftwood. This time I would let the sea take him. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Celebrating Natalie's birthday. Might be back late. She's a bit down lately. Can you prep some dessert for her? She liked that mango panna cotta you made last week. The audacity was almost funny. Natalie, his so-called little sister, whom he defended at every turn, whose return from abroad instantly downgraded me from partner to placeholder. Even now, as I lay in a hospital bed carrying his child, she was his priority. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Instagram and saw the photos already flooding in. Natalie in a pastel sundress, standing on the boardwalk. Ethan beside her, holding an umbrella over her head. Another of them laughing, a filter softening the light as if they were a couple in a travel ad. Without hesitation, I double-tapped the heart icon and commented. Wishing you both the most magical day. Don't forget to bring back souvenirs. Let them believe I was the gracious, unbothered girlfriend. It made the ending more poetic. Later that evening I stood before the bathroom mirror. My fingers trembled as I traced the curve of my abdomen. Barely a bump yet, but enough to feel the weight of life inside. You still want to go through with the abortion? The doctor had asked earlier, surprise flickering across her face as she scanned my chart. Everything looks perfectly healthy. You're almost 30, it's a good time. In my past life I'd kept the baby. I stayed home raising him while Ethan traveled with Natalie, expanding his business and building his empire. Our son Sean grew up learning to love Natalie more than me. She went to parent-teacher meetings. She took him on vacations. By the time he turned 16 he told me, "You've had Dad all to yourself for so long. Why do you still care about marriage certificates?" I had nothing. Not even my child's loyalty. This time I wasn't going to make the same mistake. The next morning Ethan called. "What's wrong?" His voice was already laced with impatience. "Are you mad again?" I said nothing. He exhaled loudly. "Lily, come on. I told you there's nothing going on between me and Natalie. She's like a sister to me. You're being too sensitive." I stared at my reflection, dead-eyed. "And now that you're pregnant, you really shouldn't be letting your emotions get the better of you. It's not good for the baby." That was Ethan. Always rationalizing, always condescending. I replied coolly. "By the way, make sure you get her something nice. Natalie's really into luxury handbags now. Check that new line she mentioned, it'll make her happy." He paused. You're not upset?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Why would I be upset? She's your employee. A good boss takes care of his staff. That silence on the other end? That was confusion. Good. Let him squirm. When Ethan first graduated we had nothing. I was the one who believed in him, who built Carter Enterprises with him from our cramped apartment's kitchen table. I took photos for product catalogs, handwrote invoices, answered customer complaints at 3 a.m. We fought through every storm. Or so I thought. The moment Natalie returned from abroad, he hired her as his personal secretary. The lines blurred. She became his shadow. then his confidant, then his priority. One evening I caught them sharing wine in his office, laughter ringing like a melody that didn't belong to me. I asked Ethan directly. His response: "She's lonely. She has no family in this city. Don't be so heartless, Lily." He could never tolerate a single negative word about her. Now he didn't even bother hiding it. That night I lay alone in bed as fireworks erupted outside the window, Natalie's birthday celebration in full swing. I was nauseous, exhausted, and completely forgotten. I didn't text him. I didn't call. When he finally returned home the next morning, I was having breakfast calmly, sipping black coffee like nothing was wrong. He looked slightly nervous. After we cut the cake, everyone insisted on karaoke. Time got away from me. I crashed at the office. "Didn't want to wake you." I nodded. "Got it." My indifference seemed to relieve him. But then, as always, his insecurity kicked in. "You've changed," he said, frowning. "In the past, if I came home late, you'd flood my phone. You didn't even call once." I swallowed a bite of toast. "Didn't you tell me to give you more space? Besides, we're not married. I don't really have the right to question you, do I?" He stared at me, trying to read my face. But there was nothing there to find. After all these years, he'd never bothered learning how to read me. That's the thing about men like Ethan. They don't listen until the silence becomes unbearable. 2 days later, I packed my bag and headed to the hospital alone. No fanfare. No goodbyes. No need. The doctor asked if I had anyone to accompany me. "No one," I said. My whole world in this life revolved around Ethan, and he wasn't even orbiting me anymore. While waiting in line to pay the surgical fees, a familiar voice startled me. "Lily." I turned. Ethan was standing nearby, holding Natalie's jacket and ID. Natalie was seated behind him, coughing lightly into a tissue. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I raised the form in my hand. "Prenatal checkup." "You." "Natalie has a cold. I brought her to get checked out." I nodded politely. "Makes sense. You're her boss." He shifted, uneasy. "I'll stay after this and go with you to your appointment." Before I could speak, Natalie joined us. Her eyes were watery, from the cold or from practiced sympathy I didn't know. "It's okay, Ethan," she said, sniffing. "I can manage on my own. Lily is more important." Classic manipulation, making herself look noble while twisting the knife. "No way," Ethan said gently. "You're sick. I can't leave you alone. What if something happens?" He turned to me. "You're okay to manage on your own, right?" I smiled. "Of course." I watched them walk away together, Ethan shielding her like she was porcelain. No one had ever shielded me. Not even once. And so, I walked into the operating room alone. When I awoke, the child in my womb was gone. In my last life, I had revolved around Ethan. In this one, I was finally learning to walk away from gravity. When I opened my eyes in the recovery room, the ceiling lights above me buzzed faintly. The ache in my abdomen throbbed dully, not painful enough to cry over but persistent enough to make its point. The child was gone. I rested my palm over my stomach, half expecting to feel some lingering presence. There was none. Just emptiness and an overwhelming sense of calm. Not peace exactly, but a kind of release. Like a chain slipping off your ankle after years of captivity. A nurse handed me a small bottle of warm water. "You need to rest for a few hours. Do you have anyone picking you up?" I shook my head. "I'll manage." She hesitated but nodded and walked off. I lay there for a long time, watching shadows move across the curtain. No one came. No one called. No flowers. No anxious pacing in the hallway. Just the rhythmic beep of someone else's heart monitor in the next bed. Eventually I left the hospital. On my way out, I passed the bench where Ethan had once promised me, "Once things stabilize, we'll get married, Lily." Just a little longer. A little longer never came. By the time I returned to the apartment, the sun had dipped low, casting golden light across the floorboards. But the warmth didn't reach me. I opened the door to find Natalie curled up on our couch, a blanket draped around her shoulders, flipping through one of Ethan's old magazines like she belonged there. Ethan emerged from the kitchen holding a mug of tea. "You're back," he said, casual as ever. "How was your checkup?" I stared at the scene before me, wondering if I had walked into the wrong home. This was supposed to be our space, the one we fought to build, crammed into for years as we clawed our way up. Now it felt like I was the intruder. Everything's fine, I said evenly. I just need some rest. You're heading to bed already? Ethan frowned. Dinner's not ready yet. I bought ingredients, they're in the kitchen. My heart dropped. He couldn't be serious. I thought you might cook something, he continued. Natalie hasn't eaten much and you're great in the kitchen. It'll cheer her up. I stared at him in disbelief. I had just walked back from the hospital after losing his child, and he wanted me to cook for his mistress? Ethan, I said slowly, which do you think is more important, Natalie's cold or my pregnancy? He looked confused. Why are you comparing the two? They're not the same. They aren't, I agreed. One is real. The other's an excuse. He stepped back slightly. What's that supposed to mean? I'm tired, I said. Didn't you hear me? I just had a medical procedure. I shouldn't be expected to. I get it, he cut in. If you don't want to cook, fine. But don't drag Natalie into it. She's a guest. I laughed, not with amusement but with the bitter exhaustion of someone finally reaching their threshold. A guest? Did I invite her here? Natalie stood then, clutching the blanket tighter. Her voice was soft and shaking. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. If I'm not welcome, I'll leave. She turned to pick up her bag, but Ethan blocked her path, shielding her with his body. Lily, he said sharply, this is my home. If anyone has to leave, it won't be Natalie. So this was where we stood. I had once told him not to put my name on the house. We're a family, I'd said. No need to differentiate. He'd smiled and kissed my forehead, promising, you'll never need proof. But now that trust had signed my eviction. I didn't reply. I simply walked out the door, carrying nothing but my phone, my wallet, and the dull ache in my stomach. Ethan didn't follow. He never did. The night air was crisp, stinging my cheeks with every gust. I couldn't go far. My body wasn't ready. So I checked into a nearby hotel. The room was small but warm, the sheets clean and white. I looked in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Dark circles under her eyes. Pale lips. Hollow cheeks. A woman who had given up everything and received nothing in return. How had I come to this? I used to be the girl who believed in dreams. Who worked late nights in Ethan's cramped office with nothing but ramen noodles and ambition. Who typed marketing emails while sitting on the floor, legs cramping, eyes burning. You don't have to work this hard, Ethan had once told me. We'll make it. I promise. Back then he had held me like I was his world. Now he held Natalie's hand as she posted seaside selfies online with captions like, when you're sad, go to the sea. The wind will carry it away. Ethan always knows how to cheer me up, blue heart. 9 photos. Ethan and almost everyone. Smiling. Holding her umbrella. Feeding her ice cream. I remembered asking him once to take a photo with me during our trip to Jeju Island. I don't like cameras, he had said. You go ahead. I liked Natalie's post. And for good measure I commented. Such a beautiful couple. Wishing you healing and joy. The poison tastes sweeter when you coat it with honey. The next morning Ethan messaged me. Feeling better? So come home. It's not safe to be out when you're pregnant. Pregnant. I stared at the message, then typed. Hope you both had a great time. He didn't reply. I returned to the apartment briefly that afternoon to gather my things. Grace, our neighbor, spotted me on the way in. Lily, she whispered. Is everything okay? I saw Ethan come home late last night, with Natalie. They were laughing. Looked like they had luggage. She hesitated, then leaned closer. I know men can be weak. But you're pregnant now. You have to hold on to him. Hold on. No, I said, almost smiling. I think it's time I let go. I scrubbed every trace of myself from that apartment. Threw out the toothbrushes, the photo frames, even the half-written grocery list I used to keep stuck on the fridge. I donated most of my clothes. Left the new pots and pans, the ones I'd bought for Ethan's stomach ulcers, with Grace. Thank you, she said, taking the bags. You're a good woman, Lily. I smiled politely. Not good. Just finally tired. As I stepped out of the building, I paused. Ethan's car was parked out front. Inside, Natalie sat in the passenger seat, laughing as she adjusted the seatbelt. Ethan leaned over, brushing hair from her face before starting the engine. It reminded me of the time he and Natalie took our son to the amusement park while I stayed home to care for his sick mother. I'd seen a photo of them later, Ethan, Natalie and Sean, under a sky of fireworks. The caption, a picture-perfect family. Someone had commented accusing Ethan of cheating. He replied under my name. We were never married. What's there to cheat on? I had confronted him. He brushed it off. If you still want to raise Sean with me, stop stirring up trouble. Don't make Natalie cry. Sean had echoed him. Mom, stop questioning Dad. Aunt Natalie gets upset. And when she's sad, I'm sad too. I remembered how I had stood there, frozen. Then Natalie had sent me a photo of Ethan kissing her. Seconds later, a message. Oops. Sent to the wrong person. You didn't see that, did you? I blocked her. And then Ethan called, furious. Why did you block Natalie? Why do you always hurt her for no reason? No reason. Every time Natalie was hurt, Ethan was furious. But when I was hurt, bleeding, alone in surgery, nothing. The final days passed in silence. Ethan didn't call. I didn't reach out. This time I wouldn't beg. Wouldn't apologize. Wouldn't wait. I had just one person left to visit before I left this world. His mother, Lon. She'd always been kind to me. Treated me like her own daughter. In my last life, I cared for her through illness, held her hand when she was in pain. As I approached her suburban home, I saw Ethan's car in the driveway. I turned to leave, but then I heard her voice through the open window. Natalie, my dear. I've missed you so much. Natalie giggled. It's Ethan's fault. He took me to the sea. Didn't want me to tire myself. Lon laughed. He finally learned to care about someone. Not like with Lily, he never treated her half as well. My knees weakened. Lan's voice continued, gentle and loving. You're the only daughter-in-law I recognize. You've always been the one. If it weren't for your condition, Ethan wouldn't have needed Lily at all. My throat went dry. Lon lowered her voice. Don't worry. Once she gives birth, the baby will be yours and Ethan's. That's how it should be. Something inside me broke. They were going to steal my child. My life. My everything. I walked away without looking back. The hotel rooms smelled like lavender detergent and sterilized floors. It wasn't homey, but that was exactly what I needed. Neutrality. A place that had never heard Ethan's voice, seen Natalie's smile, or watched me cry in the dark. I sat at the small writing desk near the window and opened my phone to the system panel. Mission terminated. Time remaining in this world. 12 days. Would you like to begin world exit protocol? I hesitated before tapping, not yet. There were still things to clean up. The next morning, Grace knocked on my hotel room door holding a container of soup. You're too thin, Lily. You need to eat. You've always taken care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once. I managed a small smile and invited her in. Her eyes swept over the room, the unopened suitcase, the stack of donation bags. You're leaving? She asked gently. I nodded. Soon. She sat across from me, her fingers fiddling with the soup container lid. I thought you should know. The night after you left, Ethan brought Natalie back. They stayed overnight. I saw them leaving in the morning with suitcases. Like they were going on a trip or moving in together. Her voice lowered. She's settled in like it's her place now. I wasn't surprised. But hearing it out loud carved another shallow wound across my chest. Thank you for telling me, I said. Grace looked at me with watery eyes. You deserved better, Lily. Everyone saw how hard you worked, how you supported him. But he... She didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Later that day I returned to the apartment for the last time. It felt like walking into a museum of someone else's life. The coffee mug I once used every morning sat untouched by the sink. The calendar on the fridge still had a heart drawn around my due date. A date that no longer mattered. I opened the storage drawers and began sorting. Half of the items were things I had bought with Ethan in mind. Wool socks for his cold feet in winter, an herbal tea set for his insomnia, a book on business expansion strategies he'd never read. All things meant to make his life easier. Warmer. I packed none of it. Instead I made piles. Donate, trash, leave behind. A small photo album caught my eye. Tucked between two instruction manuals for the espresso machine was a collection of old Polaroids. Us, in the early days. Him hunched over the laptop while I sketched logos by hand. Me asleep on a pile of invoices, and Ethan grinning beside me with a coffee cup labeled Boss Lady. Hooked, happy. Not the filtered, Instagram-curated happiness Natalie posted. But raw. I slid the album into the trash pile without hesitation. It wasn't real. If it had been, he would have fought for me. As I packed, my phone buzzed. Not Ethan. Not Natalie. The system. You've cleared 70% of your personal attachments. Emotional hold has weakened. Departure available in 10 days. I sighed. Good, I whispered. That's what I want. But my fingers trembled when I placed the last of my belongings into the suitcase. It felt like closing a chapter one hadn't realized I was still hoping might change. The door creaked open, not literally but metaphorically in my memory. You're working too hard, Ethan had once whispered when I collapsed on the couch, exhausted. We'll make it soon. Just trust me a little longer. I had trusted him. Longer than I should have. That night I sat on the hotel bed, the city lights filtering through the blinds. I clutched a small velvet box in my hand. Inside was a necklace, sapphire, Ethan's birthstone, I had saved for months to buy as a surprise gift. He once said sapphires reminded him of the ocean, his dream escape. Now Natalie had the ocean. And him. I snapped the box shut and left it on the hotel desk with a note. Give it to someone who still believes in dreams. I didn't. I spent the next 2 days moving like a ghost through my own memories. I dropped off donations at the shelter. Delivered leftover toiletries and cookware to Grace. Shredded documents with my name on them. Deleted photos, unfollowed mutual contacts. And still Ethan didn't call. He used to beg after every fight. Now his silence was deafening. But perhaps like before, he thought I'd crawl back eventually. He didn't know I had a one-way ticket out of this world. On the 4th night I received a call from the hospital. A reminder for a follow-up appointment. I declined. My womb was empty. So was my resolve to keep pretending. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, imagining what my original world might look like now. The system promised I'd return with compensation, wealth, status, independence. But more than that, I wanted clarity. I wanted a version of myself who didn't beg for love. Who didn't set herself on fire just to keep someone else warm. Who didn't believe that sacrifice was the same thing as intimacy. The Lily in this world had died once already. She wouldn't make the same mistake again. The next morning I stood in the hotel lobby, suitcase in hand. I hadn't cried. Not once. Not when Ethan chose Natalie over me. Not when Lon dismissed me like a surrogate. Not even when I lay bleeding in a hospital bed, alone. But as I walked out of the lobby into the fresh morning air, the wind hit my face, and for the first time I felt it. Freedom. Not happiness. Not yet. But the beginnings of something real. I once thought Lon Carter was the only anchor I had left in this world. Though Ethan never married me, she insisted I call her mom, and I did willingly. She had always treated me with warmth, reminded Ethan to care for me, defended me when he was unkind. In my last life, when she fell gravely ill, I dropped everything to nurse her, feeding her by hand, sleeping on a chair beside her bed. When she passed, I had sobbed until my lungs burned. Now I needed to see her one last time, not for closure but out of some ghost of gratitude. I didn't want to leave this world without a proper goodbye. Her home was just outside the city, nestled in a quiet suburb where hedges were trimmed to perfection and wind chimes danced in the breeze. As I walked up the familiar stone path, I froze. Ethan's car was parked in the driveway. I should have left right then. But some small, stupid part of me still hoped. Maybe I'd hear something, anything, that would redeem her in my eyes. Instead, I heard everything. The window was slightly ajar and the voices floated out like smoke. I've missed you, Natalie, Lon said, her tone sweet and maternal. These past few days felt so empty without your visits. Natalie's voice followed, light and playful. It's Ethan's fault. He took me to the ocean, wouldn't let me do anything strenuous. I wanted to come sooner. Lon laughed. That boy. Finally learned how to treat a woman. Thank goodness it's you he's with now. My blood chilled. Lon continued. You've always been the one, my dear. Ever since you were children, I knew it. If only you didn't have that little medical issue, Ethan would have married you straight away. There was a pause and then Natalie's voice, softer now. It's okay. I know. I'm just glad Lily agreed to have the baby, Lon said, like it was some business transaction. Once the child is born, you and Ethan can marry properly. That baby will be yours, of course. You'll raise it together. The air left my lungs. Don't worry, Natalie. You are the only daughter-in-law the Carter family will ever recognize. Lily was just a temporary vessel. I stepped back from the window, numb. So that was the plan. Bear their child. Leave. Disappear. They had never seen me as family. Not even Lon, the woman who took the soup I made when she was ill, who cried in my arms, who swore I was like a daughter. She had smiled in my face while carving a future for her real chosen one, Natalie. A dull buzzing filled my ears as I wandered back down the street. My feet moved on their own, directionless. I passed the bus stop, the bakery, a flower stall where Ethan once bought me lilies and said, "They reminded me of you, strong but soft." Now I knew they reminded him of disposability. He had thrown me away just as easily. The clouds above darkened and the breeze picked up. I found myself in a park, the same park where we used to sit with takeout boxes, dreaming about our future. Back when our dreams felt like something we could afford. I sank onto a wooden bench, pressing my hand to my chest. It didn't ache anymore. Not with grief. Not with betrayal. Just emptiness. A bottomless silence. Was I still waiting for them to change? For someone to come running after me? For Ethan to say, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. You mattered." It would never come. A red ball rolled up to my feet, breaking the stillness. I looked up. A small girl, maybe 5, stood before me with wide, curious eyes. She wore pigtails and a sparkly pink dress. "You look sad," she said. I blinked. "Do I?" She nodded, then rummaged through her tiny pocket and pulled out a crumpled lollipop. "My mom says when something makes you sad, throw it away. Keep the stuff that makes you happy." She pressed the lollipop into my hand with all the seriousness of a sacred ritual. "I threw away my math problems last time. Kept my rainbow sticker. You should keep this." I stared at the candy in my palm, grape-flavored. The kind I used to buy on my lunch breaks during the Carter Company's earliest days. I felt the burn behind my eyes, sharp and sudden. "You're a wise little girl," I whispered. He grinned. "That's what Daddy says too." Then she turned and skipped away. I sat with that lollipop for a long time. In my hands, it felt heavier than anything Ethan had ever given me. My phone buzzed. The system again. Emotional anchor severed. Maternal figure. Remaining ties. 1. Subject Ethan Carter. Days remaining. 8. Do you wish to initiate final sequence? Not yet. But soon. I turned the lollipop over in my fingers. The wind rustled the trees above, but I felt strangely still, like a piece of the world had shifted into place. I had grieved Ethan already. Now I had grieved his mother too. In my past life I gave everything, my time, my love, my body, to build something that was never truly mine. In this life I would leave it behind. Not broken. Not bitter. Just free. The days passed in a strange calm, not because the world had stilled but because I had. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped thinking about what Ethan might be doing, or whether Natalie had finally moved into the apartment officially. Because none of it mattered anymore. I had 8 days left in this world. And not a single one would be wasted waiting for a man who had never waited for me. The silence stretched. In our past arguments, Ethan's pattern never changed. Pull away, wait for me to panic, then return once I'd apologized for both our mistakes. But this time there were no messages. No calls. No apologies. He must have believed I'd return like always, carrying groceries, forcing a smile, asking if he wanted soup. He didn't know the soup pot was gone. So was I. It wasn't until 3 days later that Ethan returned to the apartment. He walked in at 8:07 p.m. expecting the usual lights on, the faint smell of lavender detergent, and the sound of my footsteps padding toward him. But there was nothing. No warmth. No clutter. No me. He flicked on the light and stepped into stillness. Then he noticed the boxes missing from the closet. The empty space on the vanity. The neatly folded blanket I always left on the couch. Gone. "Lily," he called. Only the refrigerator hummed in response. He moved through the apartment with growing urgency, opening doors, checking corners as if I might be hiding like a frightened animal. And then he saw it, the paper on the coffee table. Pinned beneath a glass of water. A folded hospital receipt. He picked it up with shaking fingers. His eyes scanned the lines. Surgical fees, anesthesia, recovery charges. His breath caught. The line that punched the air out of his chest. Procedure. Pregnancy termination, 6 weeks. His phone was out before he knew it. He dialed once. Straight to voicemail. Walked. Lily, he murmured, dialing repeatedly. No. Oh no no. He rushed into the hallway, almost colliding with Grace, who had just returned from her evening walk. Ethan, she said in surprise. You're back. He grabbed her by the shoulders. Do you know where Lily is? Grace pulled back slightly. She hasn't been here for over a week. I thought you too. Ethan didn't wait for the rest. He was already running, out the door, down the stairs, into the city. He searched the office. The cafe where I liked the lemon tarts. Even Lan's home. Nowhere. At 2:36 a.m., a friend finally texted him. Saw Lily's name on the guest list at Red Hill Suites. She checked out this morning. He drove like a madman across the city, heart hammering. But I was already gone. The sky was just starting to brighten when I arrived at the park. The same one where the little girl had handed me the lollipop. The portal shimmered faintly at the far end of the clearing, unseen by others but perfectly visible to me. The system's voice chimed gently. Final day. World exit possible. All ties cleared except one. Do you wish to say goodbye? I sat on the same bench and took a deep breath. The air felt lighter today. Like the world itself had finally stopped holding its breath around me. I opened my phone one last time. Unblocked Ethan. And called. He answered on the second ring, voice hoarse and breathless. Lily. You've been looking for me? I asked quiet. Where are you? What are you doing? Are you safe? I'm safe, I said. The question is, are you? Lily, why? His voice cracked. Why would you do it? The baby. Do you know what day I had the abortion, Ethan? Silence. It was the day you took Natalie to the hospital. For a cold. I heard him inhale sharply. I was alone in that surgical room, Ethan. No one holding my hand. No one waiting outside. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. Do you remember what your friend asked you that night, if you planned to marry me? His voice lowered. You heard that. I heard everything. I heard you say I was just someone you were staying with because I held shares in the company. Lily. I also heard your mother say she never saw me as family. That I was just here to bear Natalie's child. He was crying now. It's not what you think. I never. It doesn't matter, I said. I'm not here to blame you. I stood from the bench and turned toward the portal. I'm just here to say goodbye. Lily, what does that mean? Where are you? I looked up and saw him. Ethan. Running across the grass, his hair wind-blown, his face pale with desperation. I ended the call. He reached me seconds later, panting. Don't go, he gasped. Please. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. The portal shimmered beside me like a gate made of stars. I'll marry you, Lily, he said, his voice rising. We'll register today. We'll have the wedding you always wanted. Just don't leave. I turned slowly. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not fear of loss. Fear of permanence. Fear that this time I wasn't bluffing. I once begged for love, I said. You treated it like a burden. I once gave you everything and you let another woman take my place. You can't fix that with a wedding. I'll make it right, he pleaded. We'll try again. We'll have another baby. You'll never have to feel alone again. You're right, I said. I'll never feel alone again. I took a step back into the light. Because I'll never be with you. Lily, he screamed. But I was already gone. The portal closed behind me, sealing the world like a chapter in a book no longer worth reading. No one believed him. When Ethan told them I stepped into a glowing portal and disappeared into thin air, they looked at him like he'd finally lost his mind. She didn't vanish, one friend said gently. She just left you. Stop making it sound magical, another advised. You pushed her too far. Accept it. But Ethan couldn't. Because I hadn't just left. I had disappeared. The apartment was painfully silent without me. For the first time in his life, Ethan noticed the noise my presence had masked. The echo of his footsteps, the creak of the hallway, the hum of the air conditioner. The place felt like a stranger's house. He sat in the living room that night, his hands trembling, the hospital receipt clutched like a death certificate. He hadn't touched that paper since finding it, but now he read every line again as if looking hard enough would change the ending. The surgical fees. The date. The confirmation. He remembered that day vividly now. He was holding Natalie's hand in the waiting room while I lay alone on a hospital table. How had he missed it? How had he let it come to this? Natalie moved in 2 days later. She brought boxes of lavender-scented candles, plush throws, and her collection of pastel mugs. She rearranged the furniture and replaced the curtains. "It feels more like us now, doesn't it?" she asked, curling up on the couch with a smile. Ethan didn't respond. Because it didn't feel like home. The throw pillows were too soft. The scent too sweet. The kitchen too quiet. He tried to eat her cooking, but everything was either too salty or too bland. Lily had always adjusted to his stomach, even when she was mad at him. "You don't like it?" Natalie asked one evening, noticing he'd pushed the food aside. He smiled weakly. "It's fine." But it wasn't. She never remembered the little things, how he liked his eggs, which brand of tea soothed his migraines, that he hated cilantro. She laughed too much at the TV shows he never watched. She filled the apartment with noise, not conversation, just sound. And when she wasn't complaining about coworkers or her headaches, she was scrolling through social media, double-tapping old photos like she was still trying to prove something. Ethan began seeing me everywhere. In the reflection of the hallway mirror. In the back of the closet where I used to hang my scarf. In the faint smell of lemongrass. My shampoo, that still clung to the bathroom tiles. His work suffered first. Carter Enterprises began missing deadlines. Key clients pulled out. Orders dropped. Team morale plummeted. He tried to refocus, called emergency meetings, reorganized schedules, even fired half the staff. But his mind wasn't at the boardroom table. It was with me. Wherever I was. The crash happened on a Tuesday. He had driven to the office after 3 sleepless nights, thoughts spiraling, eyes bloodshot. Somewhere between the second traffic light and the intersection near Grace's bakery, his vision blurred. He never saw the other car. Metal crunched like paper. Glass shattered. Tires screamed. Then silence. When Ethan woke up, it was to white walls and a morphine drip. His leg was in a cast. His arm wrapped tightly. His head bandaged. Lon sat beside him, but even her worried face couldn't comfort him anymore. Because I wasn't there. Not bringing soup. Not smoothing his blanket. Not whispering, "You'll be okay." Natalie showed up 2 days later with takeout and a magazine. She sat at the edge of the bed, scrolled her phone, and complained about traffic. "This hospital's so far from everything," she groaned. "Can't they transfer you closer?" Ethan stared at her. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. She blinked. "I'm your girlfriend." He said nothing. Lan's condition deteriorated not long after. The stress of Ethan's accident, the failing business, and the mounting tension at home took its toll. She grew pale, her energy drained, her heart weaker. Natalie, after 2 weeks of half-hearted caretaking, gave up. "I'm not a nurse," she snapped one night. "You want me to take care of both of you? I didn't sign up for this." And she didn't. She hired a caretaker and moved back to her condo. "I need space," she said. But space wasn't what she was after. 3 weeks later, the company received a legal notice. Confidential documents had been leaked. Ethan's competitors had exclusive insider access to financial data, trade strategy, and projections. His first suspicion was a hacker. His second, horrifyingly, was Natalie. He confronted her. She didn't deny it. "They offered me a job," she said coldly. "You didn't expect me to sit around and watch everything crash, did you?" "You betrayed me," he whispered. She laughed. "You betrayed Lily. This is karma." And then she walked out, not once looking back. The company collapsed. The building was sold. The staff, what few remained, resigned en masse. Ethan watched the name he once built with his bare hands disappear from the office plaque. He didn't even have the energy to cry. Lon passed away a week after. The caretaker had fallen asleep in the other room while Lon tried to reach the bathroom. She slipped. Hit her head. By the time they found her, it was too late. Ethan arranged the funeral by himself. No friends came. No colleagues. No family beyond a few distant cousins. He buried her next to her late husband, the last of his lineage now sealed in stone and soil. Back home, Ethan sat in the dark, staring at the last photo of me he had taken secretly on a summer morning, my hair up, no makeup, laughing at something he'd said. He stared until dawn. Until the light hit the window just right and made the image blur with tears. He whispered my name once. Sounded like a prayer. And a curse. Then, the man in the mirror didn't look familiar anymore. His eyes were bloodshot. The stubble on his jaw was uneven. His cheeks hollowed. A shirt hung wrinkled off his shoulders, the same one Lily once ironed with care before big meetings. He touched the glass as if trying to reach through it. Maybe somewhere in the reflection the old Ethan, the one Lily believed in, still existed. But that man was long gone. There were days when he forgot to eat. Days he didn't leave the apartment. Days when he replayed her voice in his head just to hear something human. The apartment still carried faint traces of her. A scarf she had once tucked behind a drawer, the smell of jasmine when the heater kicked in. He kept a mug she left behind. He didn't drink from it. He just kept it. Because it was all he had left. He tried reaching out to old business contacts. None responded. Some were polite, others brutal. One sent a curt message. You should have protected the person who built your empire. His reputation was toxic. The scandal from the leak had gone viral. Forums called him a fool, a traitor, a man who let a jewel slip through his fingers for the sake of a mistress. The photo of Lily's hospital receipt had leaked anonymously. Sympathy surged online. But not for Ethan. Grace came by one day. He hadn't expected her to, but there she was at the door with a casserole dish and a look that was more sadness than pity. You're thinner, she said. He nodded. She stepped inside, looked around at the lifeless apartment and whispered, "This place used to be warm when she was here." Ethan didn't respond. She set the dish down, glanced at the empty dining table and turned to him. Lily was rare, she said softly. You didn't just lose a woman, Ethan. You lost a future. He finally looked at her. I know. That night he dreamed again. Lily was sitting on the couch, reading something with her legs curled beneath her. She turned to him and smiled. You're late. He smiled back, stepped forward, but the image flickered. She was gone. Just air. He woke up gasping, hand reaching for nothing. In the quiet he began talking to her. Not aloud, not at first. But in his mind. Every time he passed her old favorite cafe. Every time a song came on she used to hum. Every time he saw something she would have liked. He whispered. Are you happy? Did I ever deserve you? Please. Forgive me. Lily. In another world I stood before a floor-to-ceiling window, sunlight scattering across a marble floor. My office was on the 68th floor of the tallest tower in the city. Beneath me life bustled, the kind of life I never thought I'd live. The system's voice pinged cheerfully in my ear. Congratulations, host. Final bonus of $50 million credited to your account. Total earnings from previous world, $1 billion. I smiled. But it wasn't the money that filled me. It was the stillness in my chest. The calm that came from no longer waiting to be loved. My assistant knocked gently. Miss Lily, everyone's assembled in the conference room. They're waiting for your keynote. I nodded. As I walked toward the doors I passed a wall lined with accolades. Businesswoman of the Year, Humanitarian Awards, Global Investment Honors. In my past life I had begged for crumbs. In this life I built an empire from dust. At the podium I paused before speaking. Somewhere in another world Ethan was probably still searching for the woman he never really saw. But I was no longer that woman. I once believed sacrifice was love, I said to the room. But now I know, love doesn't demand we shrink ourselves. I scanned the audience. And I will never shrink again. Back in that dim apartment Ethan sat on the couch alone. The windows were shut. The air was stale. He picked up the hospital receipt once more, running his thumb over the print. His mother's last words rang in his ears. If Lily were still here she'd be taking care of both of us. Where in the world can you find another Lily? The answer was simple. He wouldn't. Then winter crept in quietly. The kind that numbs your fingers and settles into your bones not from cold, but from the absence of warmth. Ethan sat by the window staring at the frost creeping across the glass. The apartment hadn't changed much. Not really, but it felt like the walls were caving in slowly. Like the house had started grieving too. The lights were off more often than on. No more laughter. No more footsteps in the hallway. No scent of simmering soup or her jasmine shampoo. It had been months since Lily left. And she had never come back. He had tried everything. Hacked the portal records. Traced hotels, airports, spiritual forums. Anything. But she'd truly vanished. Gone like mist burning off in morning light. No message. No final request. Not even a trail. Only the truth she left him with. I don't want it anymore. I'll never feel alone again because I'll never be with you. His mother was buried in the family plot. The company dissolved. The house echoed like a mausoleum of mistakes. And Natalie? She hadn't returned since the day she betrayed him. Even the betrayal didn't sting anymore. Compared to Lily's departure, it felt like a paper cut in a battlefield. He stopped asking the world for answers. He just existed. Day to day. Some mornings he imagined her standing in the kitchen, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, humming softly. But when he blinked, the image was gone, replaced by silence. Lily. I stood by the ocean the same way I always dreamed I would. Barefoot in the sand, wind in my hair, sun kissing my skin. No agenda, no roles, no pretending. Just me. Whole. Healed. Alive. In this world I had built everything from scratch. Not as a helper behind someone's success, but as the architect of my own. My name stood alone at the top of every building I owned. People admired me, respected me, feared me even. But more than anything, they valued me. Not because I carried someone's child. Not because I built someone else's company. But because I was enough. Miss Lily, my assistant's voice came through my earpiece. We've finalized the acquisition. The board's awaiting your signature. Tell them I'll sign it in the morning, I replied, eyes still fixed on the tide. Yes, ma'am. I closed the call and turned my attention back to the sea. Ethan once told me the ocean was too far, too inconvenient. He hated the sand, the salt, the unpredictability. But I had always loved it. The way it roared without apology, the way it reshaped everything it touched. Much like myself now. I pulled the lollipop from my coat pocket. The same one the little girl gave me in that park. I had carried it with me across dimensions. My only souvenir from a broken world. I unwrapped it slowly and popped it into my mouth. Grape. Sweet. Unbothered by time. I laughed softly. Throw away the things that make you sad, she'd said. Keep the ones that make you happy. I kept myself. And it was enough. The sun dipped lower, turning the waves gold. Behind me my car waited. My world waited. A future without ghosts. I stood there a while longer, watching the waves carry away the last of the weight on my shoulders. Somewhere, in a distant world, a man who once had everything might still be sitting in the dark, whispering my name. But that world was no longer mine. I walked away barefoot toward the light. Not looking back. Not anymore. The end.